When I think about the legacy of the Transformers the movie, one of the things that really sticks out to me is the introduction of so many new characters. Today I'm going to talk about one of the moments that delighted me the most when I first saw the movie as a kid. Apparently Blaster has cassettes now too. My name is Mike Seibert and this is 40 for 40 Transformers the movie.
In the making. An incredible adventure and spectacular widescreen animation opens at theaters everywhere Friday, August 8th. Transformers, the movie. It's a startlingly original story that begins in the year 2005.
Look! It's Unicron!
A monster planet destroys everything in its path, while on Earth, Optimus Prime and Megatron battle to the death.
It's over, Prime.
It's a story that will surprise and shock even the most die-hard Transformer fans. Starring Leonard Nimoy and Judd Nelson, with songs by Weird Al Yankovic and Stan Bush. Escape into fantasy this summer, into the incredible rock and roll adventure. Transformers, the movie. Don't miss it. It's rated PG and opens at theaters everywhere August 8th.
I have been a fan of the Transformers since the very beginning. I've often self-identified as being G1 from day one, and that goes back as far as I can remember. I was 5 years old in 1984, and I have conflicting, overlapping memories about how I spent that birthday, but I do know that my birthday in September of 1984 was particularly iconic because I got all kinds of cool stuff. It was a great time to be 5 years old in 1984 because you have Star Wars stuff. I mean, like, even though Return of the Jedi came out in 1983, the toys were still very much a force on the shelf. I think that's the year I got the Ewok Village. So I was very much into Star Wars toys. G.I. Joe was just getting going. I mean, it had been going since 1982, but in like 1984, it's right before all the 1985 guys, but there was still plenty of cool Joes to be had in 1984. Obviously you had He-Man and the Masters of the Universe as well, but you also had Transformers. And I specifically remember on my 5th birthday, my very first Transformers figure that is still my favorite Transformers character today, Soundwave. The Decepticon communications espionage specialist with an army of little dudes at his command, his little cassette minions. And that concept always struck my imagination. And everything about Soundwave is awesome. You know, he's cool, he's slick, he's got that unique, scary, unsettling voice, which is basically Frank Welker doing his Dr. Claw voice from Inspector Gadget, but thrown through a vocoder effect that kind of gives it a weird, unsettling, sing-songy effect. And it's I'm sure I've talked about this in so many other places, but in later iterations of Soundwave, it's varying shades of getting it not right, and it's almost always diminishing returns, even when they get Frank Welker to come back and do the voice. There's something in that special alchemy, that secret sauce of Frank Welker's vocal performance, Wally Burr's direction, and all of the vocal processing that goes into it, all of the things that makes that character of Soundwave so special and iconic, to say nothing about the cassette minions. You know, we could spend any amount of time talking about which robot cassette guy is Rumble and which one is Frenzy and which one is the red one and which one is the blue one. And we'll actually kind of talk about it here in this episode and in this moment, because this is kind of sort of a rematch by proxy, I suppose, of the fight between Blaster and Soundwave in the season 2 episode Autobop. It really kind of isn't, but it's the closest thing that we would get until probably Carnage in C minor in season 3. For as often as the cassette guys or the boombox guys or the cassette recorder guys are featured, they don't really square off as much as you would think that they would, or as much as you would remember. So anyway, so Soundwave is my favorite character for all of those things that I said, the vibe and just that he's such a cool, loyal lieutenant to Megatron. He's obedient, but he's also capable, but he's also slick and cool. Like in a way, he kind of reminds me of Destro from G.I. Joe. They don't have a lot of similar character traits. I think Destro has his own machinations and his own desire for power. In the Sunbow cartoon, and certainly in Transformers the movie, Soundwave doesn't want power. He just wants to be the goodest boy and the most loyal servant to Megatron as he can. And I think he's down for the cause. I think he is loyal to the Decepticon cause, but he is loyal to Megatron, which I think we will talk about in another moment later down the line. So I don't want to get too far ahead. I should also note within this project, I have tried to curate this list of 40 as best as I can, where I touch on at pretty much every major motion and moment of the movie. There's a few things that kind of slipped through the cracks, but I think I'm pretty satisfied with my final list of 40. The ranking is incredibly subjective. I mean, I think as we get towards the end of the year, you'll find that the top makes sense, but then like the bottom kind of doesn't make sense and the middle kind of doesn't make sense. But largely, I structured this not necessarily as a definitive ranking, but more as an opportunity to talk about these moments. When I sat and watched the movie with my notepad, and I'm just scribbling down, I'm scribbling down lines of dialogue and scenes, and some things I wrote down are just things that happen. But then I had quotes and memories, and I'm scribbling notes as the movie is going, because I didn't pause it. I just let it run. So I'm furiously scribbling as this movie blitzes through 86 minutes of pure 80s. And I, when I finished my most recent watching, I turned to my wife and I'm just like, I've never done cocaine before, but if I ever did, I would imagine this is what it feels like. Watching Transformers the movie is what doing cocaine feels like, because you will forget how breakneck it is. I was just having a conversation recently with my good friend Anthony Bricali, tfu.info, and he reminded me about the music video vibe and aesthetic of Transformers the movie, and that it's very much akin to Rocky IV. And of course, Rocky IV has the same connection with the Vince DiCola score. But those two movies are very much of a kind, more so than you would think, more so than just the score. I think I did a podcast about that with my friends a million years ago. Go back through the Mike Seibert radio feed, see if you can find Talkin' Rock, Rocky IV, where we really kind of dig into the similarities between those two movies. But that's neither here nor there. That's not even what we're talking about now. Soundwave and Blaster. Okay, so Soundwave is the first Transformers toy I get, he leaves an impression on me. I also have a overlapping contradictory memory of also watching Transformers More Than Meets the Eye on TV, but I don't know how that works because my birthday is on September 15th, which if Dr. Google is to be believed, September 15th, 1984 was a Saturday. So with More Than Meets the Eye Part 1 airing on September 17th, I don't know how that works. I should probably do additional research on that. I'm not going to, because it really doesn't matter for this context of this project. My point being is that Soundwave made an impression on me in a big bad way. But in 1985, in season 2 of the Transformers, you find another tape deck robot, this time for the good guys, in a character named Blaster. Now, it's fascinating to compare and contrast the characters of Soundwave and Blaster because they're not the same guy, despite being very similar. Blaster is voiced by Buster Jones and has a very loud radio DJ presence about him, and even like in his manner of speaking, occasionally it's rhyming, sometimes it's not, but it's all just boisterous and loud, and it's the exact opposite of what Soundwave is. Soundwave is cold and calculating, and he chooses his words very carefully, and he doesn't speak a whole lot, and when he does, it has a unsettling aspect to it because, I mean, again, the vocoder effect. So it's fascinating to see these characters portrayed differently. I should also note here, Soundwave is often miscategorized as being a boombox, but that is not the case. The original microchange toy is that of a portable cassette recorder. So I think, let me look at the toy here. Okay, so there's a couple vents on him that could be interpreted as speakers, but the point being is that Soundwave is not specifically a boombox, a pardon the phrase, ghetto blaster, as was popular in the 80s. Which, so when Blaster came around, that was immediately the connotation that you had. Like the giant, over LL Cool J's shoulder with the giant speakers and all of the buttons and the multiple tape decks, and that's what folks would associate as being a tape deck. That's not, or a boombox. That's not necessarily what Soundwave was. But anyway, yeah, it's just like one of those weird perceptual misconception type of things. So, but what set Soundwave and Blaster apart? Soundwave had this army of cassette minions. Rumble and Frenzy, Ravage, Buzzsaw, and Laserbeak. And in the show, it was primarily Ravage, Laserbeak, and Rumble, the blue one. And, to wade into some of that controversy and legislation for just a moment, because, like, if you want to start a bar fight at a Transformers convention, you basically drop some kind of hot take about whether Rumble is red and Frenzy is blue, or if Frenzy is red and Rumble is blue. Now, I have kind of a postmodern take in that it doesn't matter if Rumble is red or Frenzy is blue, because in the cartoon, Rumble is purple and he's a character. Frenzy in the cartoon and in Transformers the movie here, Frenzy is not a character. Frenzy is just basically Rumble in black and red colors. And that's how I will be referring to him throughout this. Frenzy does have a moment or two in this movie, but it is specifically as a mirror of Rumble. They talk in unison. That kind of thing, which was never really a thing in the cartoon episodes, but it's a weird thing that is picked up here in Transformers the movie. Now, for the origin of this controversy, it goes all the way back to the toys in 1984. And basically, the original toy for Frenzy was the blue robot, and Rumble was the black and red robot. So purists will tell you that that's the way it should be because the toy came out first, and that's what the canon should be. But then somewhere along the way, there was a mix-up in the production of the cartoon, like the notes got swapped or something, to where Rumble, the rough and tumble street punk with the pile drivers and earthquake generating superpowers, ends up being the blue one. Now, I don't know what the origin of Rumble's more lavender purple coloring is, because that dude isn't blue, whereas the figure is primarily blue with black and silver accents. It's a cool looking figure. Oh, I'm sorry, the Frenzy one, the blue Frenzy one. See, I'm already doing it. Whereas Rumble, the red one, is again the same thing, primarily black with red accents. In fact, it's funny. We call Frenzy the red one, and maybe we should be calling him the black one. No, I don't like that. That's uncomfortable. But yeah, he's the toy. The Rumble toy has more of a primary black color scheme that has a red. The red is kind of the trim, and that matches the animation model for Frenzy. Like, his chest and most of his body is actually black and not red. The red is the trim, very similar to the blue that's on the trim for Rumble. Hopefully you're less confused than I am. But the point being that color swap has been the source of contention and the subject of many arguments over the years, and everybody thinks they're right for any number of reasons. And for me, because the Transformers franchise has been around for over 40 years, it doesn't matter, because you can do different things with different iterations at any given time. So, where I think this was more of an important source of discourse back in the 90s and maybe the early 2000s. But once you start having more contemporary media, and you have so many different versions of both Rumble and Frenzy in any number of different colors. Most folks who think they want to be correct in the argument will bring up a screenshot of the grid from the TF Wiki. And basically the grid has every Rumble and Frenzy figure that's been released and whether they are in blue or red. And the majority of the toys of Rumble are red. So people will say definitively that Rumble is red and Frenzy is blue. And that may be true and that may be fine, but my thing is that Rumble is a character in the cartoon and therefore a character in Transformers the movie. And that's the character that that we're talking about here. Rumble has moments as early as the first episode where, it's like he's got the pile drivers. He gets into fights with Hound at the bottom of the sea. He slaps Spike away. He's shown to be the same size as a human boy. that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, he's got the pile drivers, and he has a particularly iconic exchange with Starscream, where Starscream is like, I'm going to be the leader someday, and you'll listen to what I say. And Rumble, ironically enough, voiced by Frank Welker, same as Soundwave and Megatron, but he's like, look, Starscream, Megatron doesn't have any weaknesses. He's merciless, and you'll never be our leader. But like, I've always loved Frank Welker's Rumble voice, because he is kind of like a 80s New York street punk type of guy. It's got a like just enough of like a ooh ah accent to it, where it's I've always thought the performance was funny, so much so to where even Rumble of the band Cybertronic Spree emulates that voice a bit, where it's again, it's just a really fun voice. And you get to hear that in this particular moment in Transformers the movie. And I've gotten so far away in my explanation and setup that I haven't even talked about what the moment is here. It was supposed to be talking about Blaster's cassettes and not necessarily Soundwave's cassettes. But basically the moment that we're talking about here today, it's the siege of Autobot City. And Perceptor has come up to Blaster's crow's nest kind of communication outlet where Blaster has just been picking off fools. Like, he's shown, like, shooting at jets and Decepticons and seemingly kind of having like the time of his life, actually. But then Perceptor comes in and says, hey man, we need to call Optimus Prime for reinforcements.
Blaster, Ultra-Magnus sends orders to contact Optimus Prime on Moonbase 1.
Which Blaster is again disproportionately enthusiastic.
All right, cover your receptors, Perceptor.
Transforms into tape deck mode, boombox mode, interfaces with the communications array, which I think is a little is kind of a cool bit of world building, because to me, I always took the implication is that that's the only way that you can use that system. You would have to interface with it using Blaster's radio mode to do radio and send a message to Optimus Prime.
Optimus Prime, do you read me? The Decepticons are blitzing Autobot City. We're really taking a pounding. Don't know how much longer we can hold out.
Sound waves are shown, pun intended, shown kind of radiating from the tower, from the Earth, presumably towards Cybertron to call for help. Megatron sees this and commands his most loyal lieutenant Soundwave.
Soundwave, jam that transmission.
And when I talked about new characters before, this is kind of where you get the first little bit of that. I mean, we've met all kinds of new characters at this point, but like in how casually and how fast it is. So in the show, Soundwave will, press the button on his little cassette drawer and deploy a cassette minion that is a specialist for that mission. Like, he will deploy Rumble and tell him that he has to do the pile drivers and his Operation Tidal Wave or whatever, as he does like the smooth arm wave, but or like he sends Ravage for some kind of espionage mission. He'll send Laserbeak for some kind of espionage mission, but it'll always be Operation : something. Just in terms of like, Soundwave's way of speaking is very exacting. My buddy Greg Tansley, who's the co-creator and co-writer of Transformers Reanimated, a fan comic project where they're basically writing stories that take place between the end of season 2 and the beginning of Transformers the movie. But when talking about writing dialogue for Soundwave, Greg talks about this cadence. It kind of goes up and then goes down. It's kind of like, like 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5, that kind of thing. So that and that's kind of how Soundwave speaks when he deploys the cassette minions, and that happens in this moment as well. He deploys Rumble, Frenzy, Ravage, not Laserbeak, not Buzzsaw, but a brand new character, Ratbat.
Rumble, Frenzy, Ravage, Ratbat, Eject, Operation Interference.
And that's the first. Oh, shoot, a new cassette. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, we see Laserbeak earlier in the movie. We don't see Buzzsaw at all, but I've always wondered about like the inclusion or exclusion of various cassettes. Like, I'm sure Soundwave has it like optimized for various missions, but anyway, so he Operation Interference is the objective here, and one of this was almost a moment by itself, but I keep talking about how Rumble is such a punk, and he goes to transform. Actually, before that, I have to call out the animation error, because, I spent so much time talking about Rumble is red, Frenzy is blue, Rumble is blue, Frenzy is red, whatever. There's a scene where it's not even a single frame of animation. This goes on for longer than you'll remember. In the air, Soundwave deploys the cassettes, and the cassettes are flying in cassette mode, and each of them transforms. But while you see the cassettes, they are both black and red, and then they both transform into black and red robots. So I guess in that scene, and again, it's more than just one frame of animation, Rumble is red, I suppose. So I guess this would be points for the Rumble is red folks. But anyway, they land on top of this crow's nest, which is basically like a glass enclosure with satellite dishes on the top, and they just start yerking around on this satellite dish. There's sparks, and they basically manually tear the communications tower apart. Hopefully the message got out, but with that mission accomplished, now the cassettes are going to have some fun. Rumble and Frenzy engage their pile driver arms, and Rumble has this hilarious line.
First we crack the shell, then we crack the nuts inside.
In last episode, we were talking so much about the swear word, and I think talking about cracking the shell and then cracking the nuts inside, that's just on the other side of prurient as well. But anyway, so like they use the pile drivers, they break the glass, and the reason why this is one of my favorite scenes, and I'm spending so much time talking about it, is this is one of the moments in the movie that I think most brilliantly demonstrates the use of scale. I mentioned earlier that, like in the pilot, More Than Meets the Eye, Rumble is shown to be about the same size as like a human person. He's not much bigger than either Spike or Sparkplug. And so he's like evenly matched with the humans, which makes him impossibly tiny compared to the other robots, whether they be Autobots or Decepticons. But what I like, what makes this sequence so fun, is that after they break through, all of these impossibly tiny little dudes just start swarming on Perceptor, and like grabbing around his neck and just really menacing him. I also think it's funny in this when Ratbat, literally brand new character Ratbat, does literally nothing. When the two guys, Rumble and Frenzy, are yanking on the satellite dish, Ratbat is just shown flapping his bat wings. And then as they go into the enclosure and start messing with Perceptor, Rat-Bat is just kind of doing the same thing. He's just kind of like flapping his wings. I think he's supervising. I wonder if that's accidentally a reference to Rat-Bat's characterization in the Marvel comics, where he's more less of a fighter and more of like a fuel auditor, or maybe even a foreshadowing forward reference to his characterization in the IDW comic books, where, you know, he's like a senator and, you know, a schemer and a backstabber, and not necessarily getting so much on the front lines. Regardless, Rat-Bat kind of doesn't really do anything. But yeah, so Perceptor is getting swarmed by these little dudes, and I love Paul Eiding's performance as Perceptor, because he's stuffy and fussy, but like I love when he's just like under siege and immediately gives up. He tells Blaster,
Hey, run, Blaster! Save yourself!
you know, leave me to this. There's no way I can defeat this small gang of impossibly small cassette dudes. But then Blaster, again, a character that I don't have as much investment in as I do with Soundwave. I like Blaster fine, but I like him significantly less. Despite him being a radio DJ and a cassette dude and a radio and all of that, for all the reasons I've already said. But then Blaster, and I remember this really exciting me in my first viewing of the movie. He's got a great line. He's like,
No way, two can play.
and he spin kicks Ravage. Like this move is awesome. Like Ravage is coming at him. He does like this ninja spin kick thing, kicks the Jaguar out of the way. He's like, no way, two can play. And I was like, wait a second. And he like reaches his buttons are further down on like the bottom of his chest, kind of like by like his, I guess, abdomen. Presses that, door swings open. Blaster's got cassettes too, and these this army comes out of his chest. I don't know what the hell is Steeljaw supposed to be. Is he like some kind of like lion guy or something? Anyway, this lion guy comes out. This rhinoceros guy comes out. Two tough little robots come out, and they fight, and it's great. And what I like is that the scale continues. Like it's kind of presented as a bit of comedy because the cassettes are so small and Perceptor and Blaster are quote unquote normal size or larger. But yeah, it's a fun little fight. Like there's a bit where Ravage is kind of like cautiously stalking towards one of the robots. It's either eject or rewind. I don't really care. They're not characters. It doesn't make any difference. I don't remember if it's the red one or the Jesus. I don't remember if it's the black one or the blue one, but regardless, like he like hesitates and then shoots Ravage in the face and then it just kind of scares him off. Like it's almost like when I use the spray bottle to get my cats off the counter, I'll just be like, bad kitty. It's not necessarily meant to hurt him, but just kind of like bad kitty, which is even when I was a kid, that's always the way that I took it. But the sequence also shows just the attention to detail, like all the cool lighting effects and all of the buttons and the special effects and glowing and all of that other stuff. But there's the animation for this movie is so dense that there are any number of moments that you will just completely miss if you're not specifically paying attention, because the movie moves so fast. But it's stuff that you see on repeat viewings. But I always loved this moment to where after Perceptor has been rescued and now the cassettes are fully like off to the side battling amongst themselves. You know, Perceptor asks Blaster if he thinks he got through to Prime, but as he's doing so, he's like rubbing the back of his neck and kind of like cracking his neck a little bit. And I always thought that was kind of like a fun little character moment, because like at one point, like Rumble is like swinging on the back of his head, like turning his head around. So it's just kind of like a fun little moment, and the scene ends in a really cool fade out, because like, you know, Blaster, who is usually loud and brash, Buster Jones like makes him like really solemn here, and he says,
Let's hope so, because if I didn't, we're all gonna look like burnt-out toaster ovens.
And the scene fades as the cassettes are grappling, like literally like two of the robot guys look like they're like choking each other out. So it kind of takes a more serious, grim tone, and the connotation of burnout toaster ovens really kind of stuck with me also, because of what we've seen earlier in the movie. Now granted, we'll get to that much later, but for the movie to establish those kind of stakes so early on, and when it touches on it anytime there's a moment of dread, when Blaster says, let's hope so, because if I didn't, we're all going to look like burnout toaster ovens, we know what that looks like. We know what the Decepticons are going to do to these Autobots once they break through the defenses. But that's for another time. I suppose the legacy of this moment is establishing, well, that Blaster has cassettes. All throughout season 2, you see Blaster, but you don't see his cassettes. And it kind of creates some weird mismatches and incongruities. I talked about the season 2 episode Autobop, which is basically the big fight between Blaster and Soundwave. Soundwave's got tapes, but Blaster does not. So Transformers the movie kind of like, you know, kind of evens the odds a little bit. And I think because Soundwave and his cassettes had a 2-year head start, or I mean, Soundwave had a 1-year head start, and the cassettes had a 2-year head start. Blaster's cassettes are kind of unremarkable. Like I said earlier, I couldn't even tell you what kind of animal Steeljaw is supposed to be. They're not really characters. Sure, they get a little bit of time in Call of the Primitives, and obviously Rewind would go on to be an incredibly popular character in the IDW comics later, paired with Chrome Dome and the crew of The Lost Light. Is kind of like, you know, a documentary filmmaker type of thing, almost voyeuristic in the way that his obsession with videoing and capturing moments is. So some cool characterization that they end up giving Rewind. But in Transformers the movie, this is their only scene. This is the only time that you see them. Now, there were different, as the script developed, there were different versions of these characters. Like, you know, I think they were different animals and they had different names. Like, I don't know what the chicken and the egg thing is. Like, I don't know when the toys were developed versus when the script was written. But I can tell you that the robots that we know as Steeljaw, Ramhorn, Eject, and Rewind were very different in the original scripts for Transformers the movie. In the second revision of Ron Friedman's script, this one dated May 2nd, 1985. So this is a version of the script that it more closely resembles the final film that we know as Transformers the movie. This is, go back to the road to 40 episodes and my interview with Jim Sorensen, where we talk about Ron Friedman's bonkers very first draft of a Transformers feature film that doesn't have a whole lot of connectivity to what we know as Transformers the movie, but in another draft that was later refined by Flint Dille, more closely resembles the movie. But in this version, the May 2nd, 1985 version, Blaster does have a cassette army as well. And on page 18 of the script, it reads, "On Blaster, as he spews out cassettes, which transform into Cubby, a lion, Stripes, a tiger, Stinger, a scorpion, and Bolts, a small, tough robot." So what I don't know is if these are just creations that Ron Friedman came up with and stuffed into the script that Hasbro then decided to make cassette robots for Blaster, and then decided to, well, hey, a lion is a good idea, but we can't call him Cubby. He's Steeljaw. Or if we have a lion, we don't need a tiger. How about a rhinoceros? Rhinoceros, God. Anyway, you can't call him Stripes. I guess he's Ramhorn now. And then, obviously, we can't have a Stinger scorpion. And why have one robot when you could have two? So instead of a small, tough robot in Bolts, you get Eject and Rewind. I wonder if anybody has tried to do a Scorpion cassette robot. That seems like that would be something that would be pretty cool and fun. There was a Tiger cassette robot, but I don't know anything about it. I don't remember if that was packed in with the J Balvintron Soundwave repaint, or if it's just like one of those other obscure Japanese characters that I'm not familiar with. I don't remember, but I can visualize it now. I could see a tiger striped cassette robot. So that's kind of cool. But anyway, yeah. So that's the long and short of it. That's the legacy of the scene. That is the legacy of this moment. Blaster's got cassettes now too. And it was a really cool way to introduce new characters. You get a new bad guy cassette as well in the form of Rat-Bat. And that's pretty iconic. And that's one of the things that makes this one of my favorite scenes from Transformers the movie. And as you know, 2026 does mark the 40th anniversary of the Transformers the movie, and to commemorate that, I am counting down and counting up some of my favorite and most iconic moments from the movie that has had such a profound influence on my life and the content that I continue to create. That was moment number 39, Operation Interference / No Way to Complain. I'd like to thank you so much for listening to the show and making me a part of your day. And if you'd like to hear more from me, check out Mike Seibert Radio Podcast right here on this feed. And for even more Transformers content, you can check out our other show, Two Mikes, Too Furious, where me and Michael Andrews reviewed Transformers Animated one episode at a time. There is one Soundwave episode. Well, no, there's three technically, a solo episode and a two-parter. Anyway, Soundwave, and he eventually gets cassette-like minions. No Blaster in Transformers Animated. Anyway, check out Two Mikes, Too Furious for Transformers Animated Discourse. Please like, share, rate, and review this show, and let me know what you think of this new project, and I appreciate the support. And until next time, till all are one, this has been 40 for 40 Transformers the Movie. My name is Mike. Make good choices.